During the season 20 premiere, Madison Brown, star of the TLC series Sister Wives, talked candidly about the grief she feels from being separated from her father, Kody Brown. Madison hasn't spoken to her father in a long time. She acknowledged that it has been difficult for her to face the possibility that he may never be the parent she had imagined. The reality TV personality talked about Kody's other children's loss of connection and the complicated family situation. She also talked about how her brother Garrison's passing affected her and caused conflict in the family. Although she admits her part in the emotional distance, she is nevertheless annoyed that she can't completely make amends with her father. In a previous Sister Wives podcast, Meri Brown disclosed that she has stopped communicating with her father, Kody, because of his persistent transgressions of boundaries. She clarified that when she attempted to bring up old grievances, Kody became very angry. This played a part in her choice to stop communicating. She claimed that setting limits was essential to her personal well-being. Critics who asked Madison to forgive Kody were also met with resistance. Personal experiences with parents differ widely, she said. Kody's wife, Robyn, said that she had been bugging him about getting in touch with his other kids. Nevertheless, he allegedly objects, requesting room. Madison's disclosure sparked a heated response from fans, many of whom commended her for putting her health first. Setting limits with toxic family members is a brave and essential step, according to some comments. Madison Brown, star of Sister Wives on TLC, recently talked about her views over her strained relationship with her father, Kody. "You want your dad to show up," she said openly to the camera. "I'm upset even though I know I contributed to our distance." As she attempts to recognize her father for who he really is, the reality TV star went on to say that she is still learning how to deal with disappointment. Madison likened her difficulties to those of her sibling Leon, who has accepted the connection with Kody. She also discussed how her father was not there in her life. "I'm attempting to comprehend that perhaps he was unsure of how to arrive. He may be in pain," she remarked. Kody has talked about making amends with all of his ex-wives and children. "I've simply compartmentalized my heartache. Healing with everyone I know would be wonderful. However, I believe that we are at a standstill." During the show, he stated, "On their terms, this healing can only occur." The eyes of Madison Brown sparkle as the camera moves to her face. The silence of the set surrounds her as she sits in a dimly lighted confessional area. Her voice, however, breaks inside, as if she were on the verge of crying. She adds, "You want reconciliation and your dad to show up. I'm upset because I'm still learning how to not be disappointed, even though I know I had a role to play." It's a moment of unadulterated vulnerability and anguish. Additionally, it marks a sea change in this season of Sister Wives, as the story shifts from grandiosity and family conflict to something more personal, loss, limits, and the breaking of an unbreakable parental relationship. The dimensions of the Brown family's story must be examined in order to comprehend the significance of what we are witnessing. Kody Brown's polygamous marriage to Meri, Janelle, Christine, and then Robyn was documented on Sister Wives for many years. What started off as a story about family multiplies ultimately turned into one about conflicting allegiances, ephemeral relationships, and emotional rifts. The fractures have gotten wider in recent seasons. Meri formally ended the marriage in early 2023, after Christine and Janelle did the same in 2021 and 2022, respectively. The children of the family were affected by the breakup, particularly Madison and other children who had grown up in the system and now had to redefine their connection with their father. Madison is hardly the first to discuss hurt in public. Others in the extended brood have shown displeasure, mistrust, or deliberate quiet. And her sister Mykelti, with Christine, has emotionally isolated herself. However, Madison, the daughter who, in spite of her strong familial ties, is now doubting whether she even wants a relationship on terms that disregard her boundaries, becomes the main character in this season premiere. It's more than simply a sensational TV moment when the cameras capture her unraveling. It's a release. Madison attempted for a large portion of her life. She attempted to raise questions, demand accountability, and craft stories of forgiveness. Despite her frequent absences, denials, and minimizations, she now realizes that reclaiming herself is her last remaining alternative. "I'm still learning how to see him for who he is," she replies quietly. "He may be in pain." That statement is a hinge. It's a change in perspective rather than an excuse. She is acknowledging that he is a complicated and flawed person, and that maybe their relationship needs to be reconstructed, or not at all, instead of begging him to be her perfect father. But rage also comes out. "I'm upset because I'm still working on learning how to handle disappointment." The fury is directed not just at him, but also at the emotional toll she has endured, and at what he could not or would not become. In addition to what was lost, the pain also stems from what she had anticipated and the gap that still exists. We've witnessed similar situations in broken families before, so this moment strikes a chord. The parent is the one who doesn't always show up. The kid who never gives up on change. The emotional downward spiral that occurs when hope is wounded. Madison, however, is announcing a different course here, one of agency, of boundaries, of rejecting neglect masquerading as love. Kody Brown isn't silent in this episode, of course. He answers in a parallel confessional. "I've just compartmentalized the heartbreak," he says. "I'm not sure what to do. Healing with everyone I know would be wonderful." He responds, however, that the healing can only happen on their terms. On their terms is a telling statement. It puts the burden of responsibility back on his kids, who now have to decide how to make amends. The conditions must be mutually beneficial, secure, and significant. However, it also implies that Kody is unable to face the awkwardness of starting completely new relationships. He sets the pace yet acknowledges defeat. Although he is hurt, he sets a limit on how much he will recover. This posture is subtle. On one hand, it shows some self-awareness because he acknowledges his many shortcomings and yearns for improvement. Conversely, it may come off as a conditional invitation. "If you follow my guidelines, you are welcome to return." Such an approach may seem like more of the same to kids who have been harmed by recurrent inconsistencies. Another dimension is added by an undercurrent in the premiere: the family's sorrow over Madison's brother Garrison's suicide in March 2024. That death is really real. It pierces the idea of second chances, postponed dialogue, and the gradual balancing of the emotional ledger. That death raises the stakes for Madison, who is already dealing with the fallout from her broken relationship with her father. She discussed the emotional absence of Kody with her brother Leon during Garrison's death. She muses, "Garrison's death showed a lot. You want your father to come." That statement strikes a deep chord. Death made things more important in a household where so many relationships changed, loyalties were called into question, and silence and desertion had become commonplace subtexts. It brought to light what might remain unspoken for all time. Boundaries are also necessary during grief. Not everyone has to make amends. Sometimes mourning means putting your own spirit first. Although Madison's experience of sadness doesn't make the agony go away, it does motivate her to take better care of her own heart. The way Madison presents her choice to distance herself or to set boundaries is among the more remarkable aspects of her emotional collapse. She had previously let herself be exposed to assurances, justifications, and optimism. However, the statement, "I'm still learning to not be disappointed," now displays a hardened sensitivity. To put it another way, she is learning to cease making investments in expectations that are rarely fulfilled. She is resisting the notion that someone has the right to go beyond her boundaries out of love or family. It is acknowledged that relationships, including those between parents, must change or else they will deteriorate. A daughter openly breaking off her father may seem cruel to some observers. The transition to distance, however, is frequently gradual and the result of years of neglect, rejection, gaslighting, and absence. Sometimes redefining the contours or walking away are the only safe options when a rip in the fabric turns into a jagged line. In all honesty, Madison made an effort. She questioned, challenged, and confronted. However, she'd also discovered that setting limits is a self-preservation strategy, not a betrayal. She is leaving damage behind, not her family. That little detail is crucial. Compared to previous Sister Wives drama, this moment feels different. Episodes in previous seasons frequently focused on marriages, children's education, property conflicts, or the difficulties of polygamy. Yes, the emotional confrontations were dramatic, but they were frequently filtered through the peculiar family system. At this point, emotional realism is becoming more prevalent. What happens when the person who should be protecting you is unable to do so? This is a sad issue that a grown daughter is posing. We are witnessing a human fracture, not a scandalous one. The show is allowing quiet to be just as loud as conflict. Audiences that have experienced stress, abandonment, and a sense of being invisible in their own family systems may find resonance in this change. Madison's tears represent the experiences of many people who have to deal with unsatisfactory parents, not just her own. In that sense, this is catharsis rather than just tabloid conflict. Imagine for a second that the confessional room was closed, the lights were turned out, and the cameras were taken out. Let's say Madison was in a private living room when they had this talk. She would speak with the same trembling voice, the same agony, the same defensive strength, but perhaps more natural, less theatrical. Perhaps Kody's response would be more emotionally fragmented and less structured for an audience. The distinction is subtle, though. The vulnerability is genuine, even in staged television environments. An audience is not necessary for the contours of fury and grief to be valid. Yes, the lens enlarges, but the emotional substance is still there. That silent, imagined version serves as a reminder that this is storytelling with teeth, not exploitation. It compels us to face the seriousness of loss, the boundaries that must be established, and the boundaries of forgiveness. It challenges us to think about how, sometimes, the person you love the most has to be loved from a distance. The verdict is unclear in the premiere. Madison holds a door open rather than slamming it, but only if the threshold is secure. Reconciliation is what you want.